If someone had told me the most photographed woman alive would gamble everything on a look, I would have checked my lens. The flashes burned like small explosions. Every camera outside the theater seemed to shout her name. The red carpet, the screaming fans, the sea of microphones, all of it blurred into a single deafening noise. She smiled anyway. That was what was expected of her. The perfect smile, the subtle wave, the practiced glow that told the world she was fine. Inside, however, she was suffocating. When the limousine door finally closed behind her, the silence felt heavy. The city lights smeared across the tinted glass as the car moved through Crescent City, but she didn't see them. Her reflection stared back. A woman in her mid-30s, flawless makeup, chestnut hair in elegant waves, eyes that looked tired despite all the glitter. She had spent years becoming a face everyone knew, and somewhere along the way, she had forgotten what it felt like to be unseen. Her phone buzzed. Dozens of notifications, new articles, red carpet photos, interviews already trending online. She turned it face down. The silence returned cold and comforting. When the car stopped at the gates of her mansion, the driver offered a polite, "Good night, Miss Vale." She nodded, stepped out, and walked into a house that echoed with emptiness. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights, but the vastness made her feel smaller. Her assistant had left a note on the counter. Meeting with security agency at 9 a.m. New bodyguard assigned. Another one. She tossed the note aside and sank into the sofa. Heels still on, dress still perfect. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the hills. She could almost hear the laughter of the crowd fading into the distance. A ghostly echo of admiration. She no longer believed in fame, she thought, was a beautiful cage. The next morning, the rain hadn't stopped. The city lay muted, its usual glitter rinsed away. She sat by the window with a cup of coffee, hair loosely tied, face bare for the first time in days. Rain scent mingled with the soft hum of the espresso machine. "Miss Vale," her assistant called from the hall. "The agency representative is here." She sighed. "Send him in." Only it wasn't a him who entered, but a woman, tall, strong yet graceful. Early 30s, perhaps. Dark brown hair in a low bun, gray eyes sweeping the room like a lens snapping into focus. Plain black suit, white shirt, boots that made no sound on the marble. The actress blinked. "I expected someone from your team, not you in person." "I am from the team," the woman answered, voice even. "Captain Alex asked me to take this one myself. My name is Rowan Blake." "Another guard," Miss Vale muttered, folding her arms. "I assume you've read the usual, press threats, online harassment, rumors, stalkers, and so on." "I have," Rowan said. "I also read the part where you dismiss every security agent after 2 weeks." That made her look up. The actress arched a brow. "You caught that, did you?" "Yes, ma'am." Rowan's tone didn't waver. "I intend to last longer." The corner of Miss Vale's mouth twitched toward a smile. "Forgive me if I don't place a bet on it." "I don't gamble," Rowan replied. Hours slipped by. The rain didn't let up. Rowan spent the day checking entry points, testing alarms, laying perimeter sensors, movements precise, almost military. The actress trailed her for a while, curious, then grew bored. "Do you ever talk, or do you measure everything in silence?" she called from the stairs. Rowan glanced up. "Talking doesn't stop bullets, Miss Vale." "Neither does your expression," the actress shot back. "It's unnerving." "I'll take that as a compliment." Silence stretched thin. She wanted to dislike Rowan, truly wanted to, but that composure was disarming. Rowan wasn't awed by her fame, wasn't trying to impress, wasn't even curious. It was as if she saw through the image and didn't care for it. That more than anything unsettled her. By late afternoon, the storm had turned the garden into a sheet of silver. From her balcony, the actress watched the rain pour over the glass terrace. Rowan stood outside by the gate, umbrella forgotten, coat soaked, eyes fixed on the perimeter lights. She didn't move even as the rain dripped down her hair. The sight made something shift inside her, a quiet ache she couldn't name. She found herself watching longer than she intended. The woman below looked carved from stillness, as if nothing could touch her. Yet there was loneliness in that stance, too, familiar, mirrored. She turned away, frustrated by her own attention. Night fell, the storm eased. She sat by the fireplace, trying to read a script, but the words blurred together. The house was too quiet. Every sound, the ticking clock, the crackle of fire seemed amplified. Footsteps approached softly. Rowan stood at the edge of the room. "I've checked the security systems. Everything's clear for the night." The actress nodded without looking up. "You always stay up this late." "It's part of the job. Must be exhausting." "I've had worse." That tone again, measured, impersonal. Yet beneath it, there was warmth, restrained, but present. The actress finally met her eyes. "You really think you can protect me from everyone out there?" Rowan hesitated before answering. "No, but I can protect you from the ones who try to hurt you." For reasons she didn't understand, that felt like the first honest thing anyone had said to her in months. Hours later, she couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but her thoughts didn't. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, and stepped out onto the balcony. The air smelled of wet earth. Down below, Rowan was still at her post by the gate, illuminated by a single lamp. The actress leaned against the railing, watching her. The scene felt surreal. Two silhouettes under a quiet sky, both trapped in their own ways. She wanted to call out to tell her to come inside, but she didn't. Instead, she whispered into the night, "You're just doing your job, aren't you?" The woman didn't hear. Or maybe she did, but chose not to answer. Either way, something inside the actress softened. She stayed there until the chill forced her back in. Lying in bed, she replayed the image in her mind. The quiet guard under the rain. The calm face that didn't flinch. For the first time in a long while, she slept without dreams. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains. The city sparkled again, pretending the storm had never happened. But something had changed. As she walked down the hall, she saw Rowan near the kitchen, checking the morning reports. Her hair was still damp from the earlier patrol. A few loose strands framing her face. "Good morning," the actress said, surprising even herself. Rowan looked up, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Good morning, Miss Vale." There was a pause. Short, but real. Then the actress smiled faintly. "You can call me Mara when we're not in public." Rowan's lips curved just slightly. "Understood, Mara." The sound of her own name spoken in that low, steady voice sent a small tremor through her chest. She turned away quickly, pretending to be busy. "Well, I suppose we'll see if you really can last longer than 2 weeks." "Let's find out," Rowan replied. And as Mara walked toward the window, sunlight catching her hair, she realized. For the first time in years, someone in her world wasn't chasing her, flattering her, or using her. Someone was simply there. The first few days passed like a quiet experiment. Mara tried to pretend her life hadn't changed, but she noticed things. Subtle, efficient, uncomfortably precise. Rowan wasn't like any of the guards before her. She didn't fill the silence with chatter, didn't ask for autographs or photos, didn't even seem impressed by the posters of Mara's movies that lined the hallway. She moved through the house like a shadow, silent, focused, always alert. By the end of the first week, Mara found herself watching her instead of avoiding her. That afternoon, sunlight poured through the tall glass doors of the living room. Mara was on a video call with her manager, pretending to listen while flipping through a script. "They want you in Northbridge by Friday," her manager was saying. "And there's that talk show appearance next week." "Mara, do I look like I need another talk show?" "You need to keep your face out there. After last month's interview fiasco, we can't risk a media blackout." "I don't need to exist for them every second," she muttered. "You're an actress, Mara. Existing for them is the job." Before she could reply, Rowan appeared in the background, checking the terrace locks. The faint sound of her voice over the security radio cut through the argument. Calm, grounded, professional. Mara glanced back at the screen. "We'll talk later," she said sharply, and ended the call. She stood, crossed her arms, and watched Rowan move toward the window. "You know," Mara began. "I don't remember asking for a live-in statue." Rowan turned slightly. "Would you prefer I talk more?" "I'd prefer if you acted like a person." "I am acting like one," Rowan replied evenly. "A person doing her job." Mara rolled her eyes. "You're impossible." "Not impossible, just disciplined." The actress opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no point. Rowan had a way of ending conversations without ending them. Like setting down a shield you couldn't see but immediately felt. Later that evening, Mara hosted a dinner for a small circle of colleagues, directors, stylists, her manager, a few friends from the industry. Laughter and champagne filled the air, but Rowan remained in the background near the doorway, eyes quietly scanning the room. "You're wasting your time, you know," one of the guests said, noticing where Mara's gaze drifted. "These security types don't talk unless they're paid to." Mara smirked. "Maybe that's the point," her friend raised a brow. "You've been single too long. Or maybe I've just learned to enjoy silence," she replied. But when the guests left and the house felt quiet again, she realized silence wasn't as peaceful as she pretended it was. The next morning, Rowan stood by the front gate, watching as staff members came and went. She had that same stillness Mara had noticed on the first day. Unreadable, almost serene. "Do you ever rest?" Mara asked, stepping outside with her coffee. Rowan didn't turn. "Resting is for when the threat's gone." "You talk like a soldier." "I was." That made Mara pause. "Army?" Rowan nodded. "Private security afterward. Worked overseas for a few years before I returned here." Mara studied her face, searching for something. "Maybe a crack in that armor." "That explains the posture." Rowan allowed a faint smile. "And the lack of small talk." Mara chuckled softly. "You're aware of it at least." "I am." Rowan's gaze finally shifted toward her. "But small talk doesn't keep people safe." For a moment, neither spoke. The morning light hit Rowan's eyes, revealing the soft gray beneath the steel. It wasn't coldness Mara saw there. It was control. Control earned through things she probably couldn't imagine, and it stirred something dangerous. Admiration. That night, Mara had trouble sleeping again. She paced through the house barefoot, the marble cool beneath her feet. She found herself drawn to the balcony where a light drizzle blurred the horizon. Below, Rowan stood near the driveway, her jacket damp, radio in hand. The dedication was almost absurd. No one could possibly be watching the house in that rain. But there she was, unshaken. Mara hesitated, then called down softly. "You know we have cameras, right? You could just watch from inside." Rowan glanced up, her expression unreadable in the dim light. "Cameras don't stop people. They just record what went wrong." Mara leaned on the railing. "Do you ever relax?" "Not when someone's depending on me." Her tone was calm, not defensive. It hit Mara harder than expected. "Well," she said after a pause. "You're going to get pneumonia standing out there." "I'll survive," Rowan replied. "I'm sure you will," Mara murmured half to herself before stepping back inside. When she turned off the light, she noticed Rowan still hadn't moved. The following morning, Mara was preparing for a meeting when she found Rowan in the kitchen talking quietly to one of the house staff. The woman smiled before leaving, and for the first time, Mara heard Rowan laugh, low, soft, almost shy. It startled her. She entered the room casually. "You laugh? I wasn't sure you were capable." Rowan smirked. "I save it for special occasions." "Like scaring my assistant? Like seeing you up before 10? Mara pretended to glare. "You're developing sarcasm." "I adapt to my environment." They both paused. The air between them felt lighter, easier somehow. "Do you always have an answer for everything?" Mara asked. "Only when I need one." "Good. Then maybe you can tell me why you're still here." Rowan tilted her head. "Because you're not safe yet." "That's not what I meant." "I know," Rowan said quietly. And for a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of leaves outside. Every sound became sharper in the silence. Then Rowan broke it. "You should go. You'll be late for your meeting." Mara nodded, more flustered than she wanted to admit. That afternoon during a photo shoot in her living room, Mara felt the weight of the cameras again. Every flash was a reminder of who she was supposed to be. Smile. Tilt your chin. Perfection at every angle. But behind the photographer near the window, Rowan stood with her arms crossed, watching. Their eyes met for just a second, and suddenly the tension drained. Mara's next smile wasn't forced. After the session ended, she approached Rowan. "You realize you're ruining my acting method, right? Is that a complaint?" "No," she said softly. "It's a warning." Later that night, the sound of rain returned. A storm, heavier this time. Mara sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone when a sharp crack echoed outside. "Thunder or something else?" She flinched. Rowan appeared at her door seconds later. "You all right?" "Just thunder," Mara said, exhaling. Rowan scanned the room. "You should stay away from the windows. Lightning's close." Mara smiled faintly. "Are you always this calm?" "It's easier than panic." Mara studied her. The wet hair from running through the storm, the subtle scar near her jawline, the steadiness in her voice. She wanted to ask about that scar, about the things this woman had seen, but didn't. Not yet. Instead, she said, "Do you ever wish you were somewhere else?" Rowan thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but then I remember I'm where I'm supposed to be." The words lingered long after she left. Mara lay back staring at the ceiling. For years, she'd been surrounded by people who wanted her fame, her beauty, her success. Rowan wanted none of it, and that made her more dangerous than anyone else. The next morning came with pale sunlight, the air still damp. Mara walked into the living room to find Rowan already at work checking a tablet full of surveillance data. "You were up all night again," Mara said. "Routine check. You could at least pretend to sleep. You'll make the rest of us look lazy." "I doubt anyone could keep up with you," Rowan said lightly. It wasn't flirtation exactly, but it wasn't far from it either. Mara smiled slow and genuine. "Careful, Blake. You're starting to sound almost human." "Almost," Rowan replied, a faint glint in her eyes. Mara turned toward the window, sipping her coffee, her heart doing something she hadn't felt in years. Something reckless and frighteningly alive. Outside, the clouds were clearing. The city had found its gleam again, unaware that behind one mirrored pane, two women had begun to tilt each other's worlds in ways neither could yet name. Morning unfolded as usual, emails, calls, practiced flashes of laughter, but a faint current of unease ran beneath it. Mara couldn't label it, only feel it in the way Rowan hovered near her office door, checking her phone more than she should. By noon, it wasn't a feeling anymore. It was fact. Her publicist called with a tone that tightened Mara's stomach. "You need to sit down," she said. "Someone leaked photos from your private residence." Mara went still. "What kind of photos?" "Nothing explicit, but intimate. You in the kitchen, barefoot, late at night. Long lens from outside your property." The air thinned. "Mara, we're handling it. I've contacted the agency and the outlets, but don't say anything else," Mara cut in, voice low and steady. She ended the call and looked to Rowan, who had already stepped closer. "You knew, didn't you?" "I suspected someone was watching," Rowan said quietly. "The sensor logs showed interference last night." "And you didn't tell me." "I wanted confirmation first." Mara turned away, pacing, pulse loud in her ears. "They violated my home." "My home, Rowan." "I know." Rowan's voice stayed calm, though her jaw tightened. "I'll handle it." "Handle it?" Mara let out a sharp laugh. "You can't erase the internet." "No," Rowan replied, "but I can make sure it never happens again." Something in the controlled, flint-edged certainty of her tone made Mara stop. Hours later, the gates were locked and the curtains drawn. Rowan moved through the house like a slow-moving storm, checking windows, scanning feeds, resetting sensors. The motions were clipped, precise, almost military, but tension corded her shoulders. From the living room, Mara watched. Every time Rowan spoke into her radio, her voice dropped an octave: orders, coordination, command. "Do you ever get scared?" Mara asked at last. "Fear keeps you sharp," Rowan answered without looking up. "That's not an answer." "I don't have time for fear." "You can't live like that." Rowan met her eyes. "It's not living. It's protecting." The words landed harder than Mara expected. By evening, the mansion had gone quiet, too quiet. The isolation that once felt like safety now pressed against the walls. Mara sat by the fireplace with a script open, trying to vanish into the lines, but every sound outside made her flinch. Rowan appeared in the doorway. "You should rest. I'll be on watch tonight." "I can't sleep," Mara said, shaking her head. "It feels like someone's still out there." "There isn't. You can't know that." Rowan stepped closer, her tread soft on the rug. "Then trust this, if someone is out there, they'll have to get through me first." Mara looked up. "You really believe that, don't you?" Rowan's expression gentled by a fraction. "It's not belief. It's certainty." Something in Mara gave way, the day's weight, the violation, the exhaustion, all at once. Her voice trembled before she could steady it. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be watched every second? To not know what part of your life still belongs to you?" Rowan hesitated, then answered softly. "Yes." Mara blinked. "You?" "Different reasons," Rowan said, gaze slipping toward the window. "But I know what it is to be seen and never understood." That quiet truth undid her. Mara pressed a hand to her face, shaking her head. "I can't do this." Without a word, Rowan crossed the room and crouched in front of her. "Breathe," she murmured. "Look at me." And Mara did. "Now in," Rowan murmured, voice low, even, and out. The sound of her voice, steady, patient, anchored her. The panic receded, leaving only the warmth of the fire and the woman in front of her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Rowan stood slowly. "You should rest. I'll stay close." Mara nodded, too tired to argue. Hours passed. The storm outside returned, wind brushing against the windows. Mara lay in bed, restless until she heard a soft sound in the hallway, boots against the floor. She opened the door quietly. Rowan was sitting by the stairs, radio beside her, eyes half-focused on the dark. "You don't have to sit there all night," Mara whispered. Rowan looked up. "You're awake." "I couldn't sleep." Rowan motioned to the sofa near her, "Then sit." Mara hesitated, then did. The silence between them wasn't heavy this time. It felt almost peaceful. "Do you ever stop being on duty?" Mara asked. Rowan's lips curved faintly. "Not really. You must have someone waiting for you at home, though." "No," Rowan said quietly. "No one waits." Mara turned her head, studying her face in the dim light. "You don't let people in, do you?" Rowan met her gaze. "Not if it means they'll get hurt. That's lonely." "It's safe." They both fell silent. The fire in the nearby hearth flickered, reflecting in Rowan's eyes, gray, but softer than usual. Mara wanted to ask more, but her body leaned into exhaustion. The adrenaline that had kept her upright all day was gone. Her shoulder brushed Rowan's arm as she shifted. Rowan didn't move away. "I can't remember the last time someone told me to breathe," Mara murmured, her voice already fading. Rowan's reply came barely above a whisper. "You don't have to remember. Just keep doing it." That was the last thing Mara heard before sleep pulled her under. When she woke hours later, dawn had just begun to break. Pale light painted the walls gold. She was lying on the couch, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember having. Rowan sat across from her, still in uniform, watching the sunrise through the window. "You stayed," Mara said quietly. Rowan glanced at her. "You needed rest." "And you didn't?" "I don't sleep much." Mara smiled faintly. "Of course you don't." They shared a small, tired laugh, the kind that comes after surviving something together. By mid-morning, the agency called to confirm the security breach had been handled. The intruder had been caught near the outskirts of the property. His camera and equipment were confiscated. When Rowan hung up the phone, she didn't look relieved. Just focused. "It's over," Mara said, watching her. "For now. You really don't allow yourself peace, do you?" Rowan turned toward her. "Peace is earned. Not assumed." Mara crossed her arms, stepping closer. "And what about when you do earn it?" Rowan hesitated, then said softly. "Maybe I'll figure that out someday." Mara looked at her for a long moment at the faint shadows under her eyes, the steadiness that seemed unbreakable. "Thank you," she said. "For last night," Rowan met her gaze. "It's my job." "No," Mara replied. "That was more than a job." Their eyes lingered longer than either intended. The silence between them felt charged now, something unspoken, something alive. Then Rowan looked away, clearing her throat. "You should eat. You'll need your energy." Mara smiled. "For what?" Rowan's mouth curved almost imperceptibly for whatever comes next. That night, Mara stood by the window again, the city shimmering beyond the hills. She thought of the intruder, of fear, of the way Rowan's voice had steadied her when everything fell apart. For the first time, she didn't feel watched. She felt seen. And that somehow was even more terrifying. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet in a good way. No reporters outside, no flashing cameras, no headlines dissecting her every gesture. But peace, Mara discovered, could be its own kind of cage. She stared at the pool from the balcony, phone in hand, scrolling through a list of cancelled events. Every red notification felt like a reminder of how much of her life wasn't hers to begin with. Contracts, public appearances, studio demands, everything revolved around the image, not the person. And then there was Rowan. The woman moved through the house like gravity itself. Present, grounding, constant. Even after the chaos of the intrusion, Rowan never left her side. But something had changed between them since that night on the couch. The silence no longer felt cold. It felt aware. Mara caught herself wondering what Rowan was like outside of the job. How she laughed when she wasn't restraining herself, whether she liked music. Whether she'd ever had a day that wasn't defined by duty. The curiosity was dangerous and intoxicating. That afternoon, Mara paced her study while Rowan stood near the door, reviewing surveillance data. The light from the large window cast long shadows across the floor. "I need to leave," Mara said suddenly. Rowan looked up. "Leave? Go where?" "Anywhere that isn't here." "Mara, you know that's not safe." "The press." "I'm not talking about a public appearance." "She met Rowan's eyes." "I mean, really leave? Disappear just for a day?" Rowan hesitated. "You're asking me to break protocol. I'm asking you to help me breathe." The way she said it, raw, quiet, caught Rowan off guard. The soldier in her wanted to refuse, but the woman in her couldn't. Rowan exhaled slowly. "All right, but if we go my way." The plan came together faster than Mara expected. Rowan had a small network of trusted contacts, and within hours, they secured a rental car, 2 sets of simple clothes, and fake IDs with mundane names. Mara studied herself in the mirror before they left. Dark baseball cap, denim jacket, sunglasses. She barely recognized the woman staring back. "You look normal," Rowan said, almost smiling. "That's the goal," Mara replied. "You might want to try it sometime," Rowan raised a brow. "Normal doesn't come naturally to me." "Neither does freedom," Mara murmured. Rowan looked at her as if she wanted to say something, but didn't. They drove north, following the coastline. The city shrank behind them, replaced by winding roads and scattered palm trees. The sky turned a softer blue, the kind that belonged to people with fewer expectations. For a long stretch, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, filled with the hum of the engine and the rhythm of the waves beyond the cliffs. Eventually, Mara turned down the radio and said, "You ever do this before?" Rowan glanced at her. "Run away. Disguise yourself. Escape." Rowan smirked faintly. "I've done both. Usually in less comfortable cars," Mara laughed. "And with less dramatic company, I imagine depends on your definition of dramatic." "Careful," Mara warned playfully. That almost sounded like humor. "I'm adapting," Rowan said. Their eyes met briefly, too briefly, and then they both looked back at the road. By late afternoon, they reached a small town that looked like a memory from another life. Hand-painted shop signs, kids playing soccer in the street, no cameras, no one who cared who Mara Vale was. Rowan parked near a local diner. "We'll stay nearby for the night. There's a small motel down the road." Mara grinned. "A motel? That's a first. You said you wanted normal." Rowan reminded her. "This is as normal as it gets." Inside the diner, they sat in a corner booth. The air smelled of coffee and rain. A song played softly on the jukebox. Something old and sweet. Mara sipped her drink, watching Rowan from across the table. The way she scanned the room, even in a place this quiet, made Mara smile. "You don't know how to turn it off, do you?" Rowan met her gaze. "Turning it off is when people get hurt. But you can trust me," Mara said gently. "It's not about trust." Rowan's voice softened. "It's about habit." The waitress refilled their cups and the conversation drifted to small things. Music, travel, the kind of questions Mara was never asked anymore. When Rowan admitted she liked jazz, Mara smiled. "You surprise me." "I get that a lot," Rowan said. Later at the motel, the room was modest. 2 single beds, thin curtains, a faint hum from the air conditioner. It was almost absurdly simple compared to Mara's usual luxury, and yet it felt perfect. Rowan placed her bag on the chair and began checking the locks. Mara watched her from the bed, chin resting on her hand. "Do you ever stop inspecting things? Old habits die hard. You must have a million of those." Rowan looked over her shoulder. "You'd be surprised how many are useful." Mara smiled faintly. "And how many are dangerous?" Rowan paused. "One, which one?" "The one that makes me care." Mara froze. Rowan's words hung in the air, fragile and real. For a moment, neither moved. Then Rowan turned away, her voice calm again. "You should sleep. Well, leave early." Mara wanted to respond, to break the tension, but all she could do was watch her. The distance between the 2 beds felt like an ocean. Morning came with soft light spilling through the curtains. Rowan was already awake, sitting by the window with her coffee, eyes fixed on the horizon. Mara stretched, hair messy, face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in years. "You look like you've been up for hours." "Old habits," Rowan said again. Mara smiled. "You know, I think I liked last night. The silence, the normality. Rowan turned slightly. You needed it. I think we did. Their eyes met. Steady, searching, aware. Mara stood, walked toward the window, and looked outside. A music festival banner flapped in the wind down the street. Colorful, loud, alive. She turned back to Rowan, a spark lighting her expression. Let's go, she said. Rowan frowned. Go where to that? Mara pointed out the window. A festival. No one will notice us there. Rowan hesitated. That's not exactly discreet. That's the point, Mara said, grinning. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. Rowan sighed, fighting the inevitable. You're impossible. I prefer unstoppable, Mara replied. Rowan gave in, shaking her head with the faintest smile. Fine, but if anyone recognizes you, they won't, Mara promised, already pulling on her cap and jacket. For one night, Rowan, let's just exist. And as they stepped out into the sun, blending into a crowd of strangers and music, neither of them realized how much that night would change everything. The sound reached them before the lights did. A low, pulsing rhythm carried by the wind. The closer they got, the louder it became. Laughter, music, the buzz of 1,000 lives overlapping. Mara pulled her cap lower as they stepped into the festival grounds. She couldn't remember the last time she'd been surrounded by so many people without anyone knowing who she was. The anonymity was intoxicating. Rowan, however, was all alertness. Her eyes scanned the crowd, tracing exits, reading faces, keeping a silent perimeter in her mind. You know, Mara said, glancing sideways. You're allowed to enjoy yourself for once. I'm enjoying not seeing any suspicious cameras, Rowan replied, but her lips twitched in the smallest hint of a smile. They moved together through the flow of people, the smell of fried food and grass filling the air. The sun was setting behind the stage, painting everything in gold and orange. Mara's heart beat with a strange, giddy rhythm that had nothing to do with the music. For once, no one shouted her name. No one pointed, whispered, or stared. She was invisible, and she had never felt more seen. They stopped near a stall selling painted masks. Rowan paid for 2, surprising Mara. Here, she said, handing one over. Just in case someone does recognize you, Mara looked at the mask, with a delicate pattern of stars. And this one? She asked, pointing to the black mask Rowan held. I don't wear it, Rowan said simply. It's for symmetry. Mara laughed. You have a strange sense of romance, Blake. It's called operational balance. Mara tilted her head. You do know how to kill the moment. Old habits, Rowan replied. But this time, she smiled. A real one. They wandered deeper into the crowd, the music shifting from folk songs to something slower, dreamlike. 1,000 lights flickered overhead like captured fireflies. Mara closed her eyes for a second, letting the rhythm carry her. When she opened them again, Rowan was watching her, not as a client, but as something else entirely. Later, as the night deepened, they found themselves on the edge of the field where the noise thinned into quiet. Lanterns hung from trees, swaying gently in the wind. Mara sat on the grass, pulling off her cap. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, catching the soft light. This feels unreal, she said, staring at the sky. All of it. The music, the people, you. Rowan hesitated before sitting beside her. Maybe that's because you're finally outside the bubble. Mara turned to her. You make it sound like I'm in some kind of prison. Rowan didn't look away. A gilded one. But yes. The words stung only because they were true. Mara drew a breath. Then why did you agree to step inside it with me? Rowan's answer came after a pause because someone has to make sure you find the door out. The simplicity of it made Mara's throat tighten. She looked away, blinking against the sting of tears she hadn't expected. The crowd roared in the distance as the next band began to play. A slow song drifted through the air, carried by the echo of voices. Mara stood, brushing grass from her jeans. Dance with me. Rowan blinked. That's not part of the plan. It is now, Mara. But she was already stepping closer, holding out her hand. No one here knows us. No one's watching. Please. Rowan hesitated, caught between instinct and desire. Then finally, she took her hand. The first touch was electric. Mara's fingers were warm, her grip light, but certain. They began to move slowly, the music pulsing faintly around them. Rowan's movements were measured at first. Cautious, restrained, but Mara guided her closer until the space between them dissolved into shared breath. See, Mara whispered. Not every risk ends in disaster. Rowan's voice was barely audible. Some do. Then let's take this one. The world around them faded. The lights, the noise, the people. There was only the rhythm of their steps and the slow realization that this was no longer about protection. It was about surrender. When the song ended, they didn't move apart right away. The silence after the music felt heavier, more intimate. Rowan's hand lingered on Mara's waist. Her heartbeat steady beneath her palm. Thank you, Mara said softly. For what? For letting yourself exist for a minute. Rowan's gaze held hers gray and unguarded. You make it sound easy. Maybe it is, Mara whispered. With the right person. The words hung between them. Fragile, dangerous, undeniable. Then Rowan took a step back. We should head back soon. But neither of them moved. A burst of fireworks broke the silence, scattering colors across the sky. The crowd cheered in the distance. Mara tilted her head back, smiling, eyes full of reflected light. Rowan watched her, really watched her, and something inside her chest shifted. The woman she'd sworn to protect looked more alive now than ever, unmasked and radiant. And the thought of returning her to the world that would cage her again felt unbearable. Mara turned, catching Rowan's gaze. What is it? Nothing, Rowan said. But her voice betrayed her. Rowan, Mara pressed, stepping closer. What are you afraid of? Losing control, she admitted quietly. Mara's voice softened. You've spent your whole life controlling things that can't be controlled. Rowan's eyes met hers, steady but trembling at the edges. And what happens when I stop? Mara didn't answer with words. She reached up, her fingers brushing against Rowan's jaw. The air between them thickened, charged, inevitable. Rowan didn't pull away. Couldn't. The world had narrowed to the sound of their breathing. The taste of night air. The shared heartbeat that neither could ignore. When their lips met, it wasn't a spark. It was a collision of everything they'd been holding back. The kiss was slow at first. Hesitant, then deeper, desperate. Rowan's hand found the back of Mara's neck, pulling her closer, while Mara's fingers tangled in the fabric of Rowan's jacket. It was both everything forbidden and everything right. When they finally broke apart, the silence was deafening. Mara rested her forehead against Rowan's. Tell me that wasn't a mistake. Rowan closed her eyes. It depends on whether you want to go back to your world tomorrow. Mara exhaled. I don't know if I can. Rowan brushed her thumb across Mara's cheek, her touch almost tender. You can. You just don't want to. Mara smiled faintly. Maybe I don't want to go back alone. For the first time, Rowan didn't have an answer. They sat together long after the crowd began to fade, watching the embers of fireworks drift into the darkness. Neither spoke. Words would have broken the fragile truth hanging between them. When the last song ended, Rowan finally stood, offering a hand to help Mara up. Come on, she said quietly. Before morning catches us. Mara took her hand, fingers lacing through hers. And what if I wanted to? Rowan looked at her, eyes soft and sad. Then we'll deal with it together. They walked back through the emptying field, the lights dimming behind them, the air still carrying the faint scent of smoke and music. For the first time in years, Mara didn't feel like she was running from something, she felt like she was running towards something, even if she didn't yet know where it would lead. That night, in the quiet of the motel, Mara lay awake staring at the ceiling. She could still feel Rowan's touch, still taste the rain and fireworks smoke on her lips. She knew things could never go back to the way they were before, and she wasn't sure she wanted them to. Outside, Rowan sat near the window, keeping watch, but her gaze wasn't on the street. It was lost somewhere far away, caught between duty and something far more dangerous. When Mara whispered her name softly into the darkness, Rowan didn't answer. But her heartbeat, steady, protective, and entirely human, was enough. They left the small town before sunrise. The sky still painted in pale pink and silver. Neither spoke for most of the drive. The radio hummed quietly, a love song Mara didn't dare sing along to. Every note reminded her of the night before. Of the fireworks, of Rowan's lips, of the impossible truth now hanging between them. When they reached the outskirts of Crescent City, the first billboards reappeared. Faces, slogans, movies, the world Mara had tried to forget for 48 hours. Her own image stared back from one of them, larger than life, smiling for a crowd she no longer recognized. Rowan noticed her silence. You okay? Mara nodded, though her throat felt tight. Almost. But when her phone buzzed again, the first time since they'd left, she knew almost was over. She hesitated before checking the screen. Dozens of messages, her publicist, her manager, her assistant, all caps, frantic. She scrolled and the blood drained from her face. Photos leaked. Festival spotted. Who is the woman with Mara Hail? Rowan's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. What happened? Mara turned the screen toward her. A tabloid site flashed back at them. Silvergate's reclusive stars seen at music festival. And she's not alone. The photo was blurry but unmistakable. Mara laughing, hand in Rowan's, both of them under the glow of fireworks. Her voice came out as a whisper. They found us. By the time they reached the mansion, the gates were crowded again. Reporters, photographers, cars blocking the street. The moment the security doors closed behind them, the sound outside became a dull roar. Mara leaned against the wall, pressing her hands to her temples. I can't believe this is happening. Rowan stood a few steps away, calm but rigid. We'll handle it. How? You can't handle the internet. Mara snapped, voice cracking. You can't protect me from this. Rowan didn't flinch. Then let me protect you from everything else. Mara laughed bitterly. That's not how this works, Rowan. You think the studio will keep me? That the sponsors won't panic? Rowan's silence was heavy. An answer she didn't want to give. Say it, Mara demanded. You know what they'll do. They'll ask for a statement, Rowan said softly. And they'll expect you to deny it. The words made Mara's stomach turn. Deny you? You mean? Rowan didn't respond. She just looked at her and that silence said everything. By afternoon, the house had become a war room. Mara's manager and publicist arrived in a whirlwind of tension and urgency. They spread tablets and papers across the dining table, firing off phrases like damage control and narrative management. Rowan stood near the wall, hands behind her back, invisible and necessary all at once. Mara, her manager, began carefully. We need to release a statement before the late-night shows run the story. Something simple. Maybe that the woman in the photo is part of your staff. My staff? Mara interrupted, incredulous. She's not a background prop you can erase with a sentence. Her manager sighed. I know this is complicated, but if you don't clarify, people will assume the worst. The worst? She repeated, her voice trembling now. That I have feelings. That I dared to have one night where I wasn't performing. The room fell quiet. Even Rowan didn't move. Finally, Mara's publicist spoke softly. If you say nothing, they'll make up their own version. You know how this goes. Mara turned toward the window, staring at the swarm of flashes outside. Maybe I'm tired of their version. When the others finally left, the silence that followed felt louder than before. Rowan approached cautiously. You don't have to fight this alone. Mara laughed softly, bitterly. You say that like I have a choice. You always have a choice, Rowan said. Even if it's hard, Mara turned to her. Then what's yours, Rowan? What do you choose? Rowan's jaw tightened. To do what I was hired to do. And what if I don't want you to be hired anymore? That stopped her. Mara took a step forward. What if I want you to be here because you want to, not because you're paid to? Rowan's breath hitched, her composure slipping for the first time. Don't do this. Do what? Blur the line. Mara's voice gentled. That line vanished the second you kissed me. For a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. Rowan's gray eyes flickered, pain, longing, and restraint knotted together. Then, barely above a whisper, you should let me go. Mara shook her head. I can't. Yes, you can, Rowan forced out. You're strong enough to face this without me. And if I stay, they'll tear you apart, your reputation, your work, everything you've built. Maybe it's time something real broke through all that, Mara said quietly. Maybe I'm done pretending. Rowan studied her for a long, breaking moment, then turned away. Don't make this harder than it already is. She left the room. Mara didn't stop her. She couldn't. By morning, the house felt wrong, hollow, hushed. Staff moved carefully, voices lowered as if the walls might crack. Mara sat at the kitchen table while her coffee cooled untouched. Every few minutes, her phone buzzed, new interviews, trending hashtags, opinion pieces carving up her private life. She flipped it face down again. When she finally looked toward the gate, she half expected Rowan's silhouette, steady against the uproar. The space was empty. She told herself it was right. That Rowan had been honest. That this was the cost of the spotlight. But the truth cut deeper than she'd imagined. She had built everything on control: what to say, how to look, who to be, and in a single weekend, that grip had slipped. What frightened her most wasn't the scandal or the headlines. It was the possibility that she didn't want that control back. That night the rain returned, as if the storm had been waiting. Mara stood on the balcony, hair damp, eyes fixed on the net of city lights below. She conjured the festival, the music, the laughter, the exact moment Rowan's hand found hers. Each detail burned behind her eyes, like a dream she wasn't ready to leave. Her phone buzzed again. A new message from her manager: "Tomorrow, we'll release the official statement denying everything. Please confirm." She read it once, then again. She set the phone on the railing and watched the screen fade to black. In the glass door's reflection, her face looked back, tired, unguarded, real. For the first time in years, she didn't recognize the woman staring. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. Across the city, Rowan sat in her small apartment, rain rattling the window. Her jacket hung by the door, still threaded with the faint scent of Mara's perfume. She told herself she'd done the right thing. The truth was unbearable. Her phone vibrated, an incoming message from Mara's agency. Official termination notice signed electronically. Rowan stared at it for a long time, then deleted it without opening the attachment. The job was over. But the woman wasn't, and neither of them knew what would hurt more: the silence that followed, or the echo of what they'd almost had. Morning light crept slowly through the curtains, painting golden streaks across the marble floor. But inside the mansion, everything felt gray. Mara hadn't slept. The air was heavy, the kind that carried the weight of decision. She sat by the kitchen window, staring at her untouched breakfast. The headlines from her tablet glared up at her like accusations. Mara Hail breaks silence tonight on live interview. Insider claims actress plans to deny rumors. Her manager's voice replayed in her head. Keep it clean. Keep it neutral. Tell them what they want to hear. But the problem was she didn't even know who they were anymore. Outside the noise had returned. Reporters crowded the street beyond the gates, calling her name, shouting questions. She could hear them, even through the closed windows. Every word sounded like a demand. Confess. Explain. Regret. She stood slowly and walked to the mirror. The reflection that stared back looked perfect, polished, familiar. The woman she had trained the world to love. But under that flawless surface, her heart raced in panic. Her assistant entered quietly. "They're ready for you in an hour. The network car is outside." Mara nodded absently. "Do you want me to call Miss Blake?" The name landed like a punch. "She doesn't work for me anymore," Mara said softly. "You can go." When she was alone again, she pressed her palms against the sink, trying to steady her breathing. The memory of Rowan's voice came unbidden. Low, calm, unshakable. "Breathe. Look at me." In and out. She shut her eyes, whispering to herself, "I'm fine." But she wasn't. At the television studio, everything moved fast. Stylists, producers, assistants, all motion, no soul. Cameras glinted from every angle. The host, a man known for his charm and cruelty, greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mara Hail," he said, shaking her hand. "The world is waiting to hear from you." She smiled politely, the way she'd been taught. Then, let's not keep them waiting. The stage lights were blinding. The makeup artist dabbed at her cheek one last time, and someone counted down from 5. When the cameras rolled, her heartbeat synced with the red light above the lens. "Miss Hail," the host began smoothly. "You've been in the headlines for the past 48 hours after photos surfaced showing you with your personal security agent. There's been speculation about your relationship, about your personal life. What would you like to say to the people watching right now?" The question hung in the air, sharp as glass. Mara inhaled, rehearsing the answer she'd been told to give. "She's just a colleague." It was taken out of context, but the words died before they reached her mouth. Her throat burned. The silence stretched. In that suspended moment, her gaze caught her reflection in one of the dark studio cameras. And suddenly she saw Rowan, not really there, but there in her mind, standing by the gate in the rain, steady and unflinching. And something inside her broke open. She leaned forward, voice trembling at first, then steady. "I've spent most of my life pretending," she said. "Pretending to be what people expect. Pretending to be fine. Pretending that the version of me on a screen is who I really am. The host blinked, startled. Miss Vale, she continued louder now. But that woman in the photo, she isn't part of an act. She's real. And for the first time, so am I. Gasps rippled through the crew behind the cameras. The host tried to regain control. Are you saying? I'm saying, Mara interrupted. That I'm done hiding. The woman in that photo protected me when no one else could. She didn't ask for fame or attention. She just stood by me when I couldn't stand on my own. And if the world wants to call that a scandal, then maybe the world needs to rethink what love looks like. The room fell silent. The host stared, speechless. Mara's heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her voice stayed calm. So, no, I won't deny it. Not this time. Not her. Outside the studio, reporters erupted like a storm. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. Headlines were already forming, but inside, Mara walked calmly through the corridor, her heels clicking against the tile. She could feel the weight lifting off her chest, replaced by something else. Not fear, not shame, but relief. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was speaking as herself. Across the city, Rowan watched the live broadcast from a small cafe. She hadn't planned to, but when the screen above the counter flickered with Mara's face, she couldn't look away. As Mara spoke, Rowan's hand tightened around her cup. Every word hit like a pulse, drawing tears she refused to wipe away. When the interview ended, the cafe was silent for a moment before the chatter resumed. Rowan stood abruptly, leaving money on the table and walked out into the sunlight. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't sit still. By evening, the entire world had seen it. Social media flooded with clips, reactions, debates. Some praised her courage, others condemned her. But through it all, one thing was clear. Mara Vale had stopped hiding. Her manager called repeatedly. Her assistant left frantic voicemails, but Mara ignored them all. She sat on the balcony, watching the city lights blur beneath the drizzle. Every heartbeat whispered Rowan's name. When her doorbell rang near midnight, she didn't move. At first, she thought it was another journalist, another apology, another plea from her team. But something made her rise, something quiet and certain. When she opened the door, Rowan stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes tired but fierce. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Mara whispered, "You saw it." Rowan nodded. "I did." Mara's voice trembled. "They'll come after you, too, you know." "I don't care." The words hit with the force of truth. Rowan took a small step closer. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone." "I wasn't alone," Mara said. "Not really," Rowan's breath hitched. "Mara." But Mara reached out, her hand brushing against the sleeve of Rowan's coat. "You told me once you'd protect me from whoever tried to hurt me. You forgot to protect me from myself." Rowan let out a shaky laugh, a sound that was half relief, half heartbreak. "You're impossible." "I know." Silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they hadn't said. Then Rowan reached up, cupping Mara's face gently. "Are you sure about this? About us?" Mara leaned into her touch. "For the first time in my life, yes." The rain outside softened to a whisper as Rowan kissed her. Slow, certain, real. When they finally parted, Mara rested her forehead against hers. "So, what happens now?" Rowan smiled faintly. "Now we stopped running." Later that night, they sat together on the couch, the sound of rain wrapping around the house like a lullaby. The chaos outside still roared. Articles, rumors, debates. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Mara looked at Rowan and whispered, "You once said peace has to be earned. Think we've earned it yet?" Rowan brushed a damp strand of hair from her face. "We're getting there." And as the storm faded, so did the noise of the world. For the first time, Mara Vale felt free. Not because the world finally saw her, but because she finally saw herself. The world didn't end after the interview. Though for a few days, it certainly tried. Headlines exploded across every screen. Mara Vale comes out on live television. Bodyguard love story shocks Silvergate. Courage or career suicide? For 48 hours, the noise was deafening. Commentators debated her sincerity. Old colleagues issued carefully crafted statements, and the studio suspended her next project, pending review. But between the chaos and the judgment, something unexpected began to happen. People started to listen. Her message, simple, raw, human, had reached further than any performance she'd ever given. Mara stopped reading the articles after the third day. Instead, she focused on small things, making coffee in her kitchen, feeling the rain hit the glass, watching Rowan move quietly through the house like she belonged there, because now she did. They decided to stay low for a while. The mansion was too exposed, so Rowan suggested something quieter. A small property she had once used for work near Sagebrush Canyon. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, a porch overlooking the hills, a single path leading to nowhere in particular. But the moment Mara stepped out of the car and smelled the eucalyptus and earth, she exhaled. No photographers, no calls, no expectations, just space. Rowan carried the last of the bags inside. "You'll need to adjust to silence again," she said. "I think I've missed it. You always said silence made you nervous." Mara looked at her, smiling softly. "Not this kind." The first few days in the canyon felt like rediscovering how to exist. Mara cooked badly. And Rowan fixed what she burned. They walked the trails at sunset, fingers brushing occasionally, but not always. Sometimes they didn't talk for hours. Sometimes they couldn't stop. One night while sitting on the porch wrapped in a blanket, Mara asked, "Do you ever regret anything?" Rowan took a long breath before answering. "I regret waiting so long to let you see me." Mara's eyes softened. "I think I've spent my whole life wishing someone would." They didn't need to say more. By the second week, the noise outside had begun to fade. Support poured in from fans, from strangers, even from unexpected corners of the industry. People called her brave, reckless, inspiring. She didn't feel like any of those things, just honest. Still, reality had a way of finding cracks. One afternoon, her manager called again. Mara almost didn't answer. "Your name's back in every conversation," he said, voice lighter than before. "The network wants to rescue the project. They think the controversy could work in your favor. They're calling it a comeback." Mara leaned against the porch railing, looking at the sun melting behind the hills. "I'm not sure I want to come back," he hesitated. "Then what do you want?" She looked through the open door where Rowan sat at the table reading a book, light spilling over her shoulders. "I think," Mara said, "for once, I already have it." Later that evening, Rowan found her outside barefoot in the grass, eyes lifted toward the darkening sky. "Your phone's been buzzing," Rowan said. "Let it buzz," Rowan smirked faintly. "You're becoming unpredictable." "I'm finally predictable to myself." They stood quietly for a while, the air warm and sweet with the scent of sage. Then Rowan reached for her hand. "You realize they'll never stop talking about us, right?" Mara intertwined their fingers. "Let them. I spent years living for their noise. Now I get to decide who I listen to." Rowan smiled, not the guarded, professional curve Mara had seen in public, but the quiet one she wore only when no one else was looking. "And who's that?" "You," Mara said, simply. She woke early the next morning. Light crept softly across the sheets, and for a moment she just lay there, listening, not to traffic or shutters clicking, but to the steady hush of Rowan's breathing beside her. Peace didn't thunder. It whispered. Mara reached out, tracing a fingertip down Rowan's arm until her eyes fluttered open. "Morning," Rowan murmured. "Morning," Mara whispered back. They stayed like that, unhurried, a stillness neither had ever allowed before. Then Rowan, almost playful, "You realize this isn't a movie, right?" "Good," Mara smiled. "Movies end." By mid-afternoon, her manager arrived unannounced, the shine of his black car stark beside their old truck. Rowan was already on the porch when he approached. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quickly, hands raised. "I just need 5 minutes." Rowan stepped aside but didn't stray far. Inside, Mara listened to the pitch, endorsements, talk shows, rebranding, each word pressing heavier than the last. When he finished, she said quietly, "I don't want to sell this, Max." "What I said wasn't a strategy. It was a confession." He frowned. "You're throwing away everything you built." She shook her head. "No. I'm keeping the part that matters." His expression softened, though confusion lingered. "You've changed." "I finally stopped pretending," Mara answered. When he left, Rowan was waiting in the doorway, eyes asking without words. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay." Mara exhaled and rested her head against Rowan's shoulder for a breath. "I think I just fired my entire old life." That night, they drove to the canyon's edge, where the city lights were only a pale shimmer far off. Wind lifted Mara's hair as she stepped from the truck and stared toward the horizon. "It's strange," she said. I spent years chasing visibility, and now that I have it, all I want is to disappear. You didn't disappear, Rowan answered from behind her. You found the parts worth being seen. Mara turned, a quiet smile tugging at her mouth. That's something only you would say. That's because I mean it, Rowan said, meeting her gaze. Silence settled, warm and certain, and Mara leaned in to kiss her, slow, steady, grounding. When they parted, the last light had dropped away, leaving only the wide, endless sky. In the weeks that followed, Mara began to write again, not scripts, but fragments of truth, thoughts, confessions, letters she would never send. Rowan often found her on the porch at dusk, scribbling until the day slipped out of sight. One evening, Rowan sat beside her. What are you writing? A beginning? Mara smiled. Not an ending? I've had enough endings, she said. This one's different. Days became weeks, and the world moved on. Headlines faded. Cameras turned elsewhere. The story of the actress and her bodyguard thinned into a whisper in Silvergate's crowded memory. But for Mara and Rowan, life finally settled into a pace they could live with, mornings of quiet coffee, afternoons of laughter, nights that felt like freedom. Sometimes Mara woke and simply watched Rowan sleeping. The same calm she'd once mistaken for distance now felt like home. And every time she looked at her, she thought, this is what truth feels like.